Once celebrated as a hero of the fallen war, a man who once stood on Buckingham Palace's balcony as a symbol of British naval pride now faces the grim reality of potentially fleeing his homeland to escape the weight of the law. Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, finds himself at the center of a storm so severe that it threatens not only his reputation but also risks dragging his former wife, Sarah Ferguson, into a scandal from which recovery may be impossible. Welcome, viewers, and thank you for joining us for a deep dive into the latest developments surrounding the House of Windsor. Before we unpack this unfolding crisis, take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can follow our detailed, well-researched stories on the people who have shaped modern history. The British monarchy has endured countless trials over the centuries, from abdications to tragic losses. But the current situation facing the Yorks is different. It's a story of silence being broken, loyalties tested, and the reckoning that arrives when the protective shield of royalty begins to crumble. For years, Andrew and Sarah lived in a precarious stability, protected by royal lodge and the remnants of their former status. Now, that shield is under siege by a force stronger than any legal defense: the voices of those who were once paid to protect their secrets. At the center of this upheaval is Andrew Looney, a historian and biographer whose recent book, The Rise and Fall of the House of York, has rattled the establishment. According to Looney, his work has acted as a signal, prompting decades of silence to finally break. His sources are not idle gossipers. They include royal protection officers, diplomats managing sensitive international dealings, and former Royal Navy colleagues, all of whom once held the Duke's trust and are now speaking out. The volume of new testimony is staggering. Looney reports receiving tips from 2 or 3 individuals every day. The influx is so significant that he has already announced plans for a sequel, currently untitled, which will compile the flood of new material from those now willing to go on the record. Many who previously shared information off the record are now requesting their accounts be included publicly, marking an unprecedented shift and a major challenge for the Yorks. To understand why this reckoning is happening now, we need to consider the unique position Andrew and Sarah have held within the royal family. Their 1986 wedding was a cultural breath of fresh air, a dashing pilot and a vivacious commoner, offering a fun, relatable contrast to the formal Charles and Diana. But the fairy tale quickly unraveled. The 1990s brought scandal, separation, and divorce in 1996. Yet unlike most divorced couples, the Yorks remain closely bonded, living together at Royal Lodge and supporting each other through a string of personal and financial controversies. For years, palace insiders and the public alike sensed the Yorks were largely insulated from accountability. Sarah's questionable business ventures and Andrew's controversial associations seemed shielded by royal status, deflecting scrutiny that would have ended most public careers. But those days are over. The streamlined monarchy envisioned by King Charles III allows little room for the liabilities and excesses of the past. The former royal staff now speaking out are motivated by various reasons. Some feel a moral duty, believing the moment for honesty has arrived. As one ex-staffer noted, they refuse to go down in history as the ones who stayed silent while misconduct occurred. Asterisk. Many are now reflecting on their own legacies and how history will remember them. Others are driven by resentment over how they were treated during their service, or by the realization that the Duke no longer wields the influence to protect or punish them. One insider described the atmosphere as quaking. There is a chilling scenario for the monarchy: Prince Andrew potentially orchestrating yet another public misstep, essentially undermining himself, a pattern painfully familiar from his disastrous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis. That interview, intended to defend his reputation, instead forced him into retirement from public duties. Today, there is concern that staff and associates' testimonies could deliver a far more thorough and damaging account than any single interview ever could. What might these whistleblowers reveal? The potential scope is enormous. Protection officers witness every movement, visitor, and late-night conversation. Diplomats observe the behind-the-scenes reality of trade, missions, and interactions with foreign officials that never appear in press releases. Navy colleagues could offer insight into the Duke's character during his military service and how he behaved outside the public eye. Taken together, these perspectives paint a full 360 portrait of a man who has long believed himself untouchable. Andrew Looney has made perhaps the most striking prediction regarding the Duke's future. As legal pressures intensify and witnesses come forward, Looney suggests that Prince Andrew may opt for self-imposed exile. He draws a parallel to King Juan Carlos of Spain, who, despite once being celebrated for guiding Spain to democracy, fled to the UAE in 2020 amid financial investigations. Looney believes that if formal charges are brought against Andrew, he is unlikely to stay in Britain to contest them. Instead, he could relocate to the Middle East or another jurisdiction with complex extradition rules and long-standing personal connections. The idea of a British prince living in exile to avoid prosecution might have seemed unimaginable a decade ago, but it is now considered a realistic possibility. Such a move would mark the final tragic chapter in the decline of the House of York and place King Charles in an extraordinarily difficult position. The king has already faced pressure to evict Andrew from the 30-room royal lodge at Windsor, a move the Duke has resisted, clinging to his long-standing lease. But if Andrew becomes a fugitive or even a formal subject of serious criminal investigation, spurred by new testimonies, Charles would likely have no choice but to sever all remaining ties. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, is equally caught in this turmoil. Despite her recent efforts to rehabilitate her public image through writing and charity, her fate remains intertwined with Andrew's. If allegations touch upon those shared finances or suggest she acted as a gatekeeper for the Duke, her hard-earned resurgence could vanish almost instantly. We must also consider the impact on their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Both have built independent lives and families while conducting themselves with dignity, yet they are repeatedly drawn back into the shadow of their parents' controversies. The prospect of their father fleeing the country or facing a barrage of public allegations would be a heavy burden for anyone, royal or not. Why is this breaking now? Partly it reflects a generational shift. With Queen Elizabeth II's passing, Andrew lost his strongest protector. The Queen's affection for her son was well known. While she prioritized the monarchy's stability, she also offered Andrew a private safety net. King Charles, although presumably still feels familial affection, is focused on preserving the crown's relevance in a skeptical modern world. He cannot allow the House of York to jeopardize the House of Windsor. Additionally, cultural expectations have changed. Today, accountability is demanded, and the idea of royals living above the law is widely rejected. Older generations, who once marveled at the glamour and promise of the 1980s monarchy, now watch with a sense of disappointment. The sheer number of individuals stepping forward to speak with Andrew Looney suggests a collective unburdening, an unspooling of secrets that had long been held in check. For years, the mere presence of the palace's men in gray suits was enough to keep people silent. But as the Duke's influence diminishes, so too does that fear. Increasingly, people recognize that the truth has a way of surfacing, and they'd rather be the ones telling it than be accused of concealing it. As we await Andrew Looney's sequel, Untitled, and the paperback release of Entitled, a sense of tense anticipation lingers. Every day more voices come forward, deepening the shadow under which the Duke and Duchess of York now live. Insiders describe a nightmare that goes beyond legal troubles. It's the complete loss of control over their own narrative. For royals whose lives are inseparable from public perception, that is perhaps the ultimate fear. This unfolding situation also raises broader questions about the future of the British monarchy. It underscores the necessity for the institution to adapt continuously in order to endure. King Charles's plan for a smaller, more transparent royal family is not merely a matter of style, it is a survival strategy. The scandals surrounding Prince Andrew serve as a stark demonstration of why the old approach of shielding family members at all costs can no longer continue. As this story evolves, we aim to provide context and analysis to help you understand its significance. The floodgates have opened, and what emerges could reshape the British landscape permanently. We want to hear your perspectives. Will Prince Andrew be compelled to leave the country, or is this just another episode in a long-running saga that will eventually fade? Do you feel sympathy for Sarah Ferguson, or hold her partly responsible for the current state of affairs? And most critically, how should King Charles respond to his brother? As more allegations surface, share your thoughts in the comments. We value your insight and look forward to respectful, thoughtful discussion. If this in-depth analysis has been helpful, Please give it a thumbs up to support our channel and reach more people interested in these historical and contemporary stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss future updates about the royal family and global events. The saga of the House of York is a cautionary tale of how swiftly status can vanish and how enduring the shadows of the past can be. As accounts from protection officers, diplomats, and naval personnel begin to emerge, the silence that once protected the Duke is giving way to a surge of revelations. This nightmare is only beginning, and the world is watching to see how it concludes. To fully grasp the weight of Looney's claims, it is essential to examine the specific groups he mentions: protection officers, diplomats, and Navy personnel. Each represents a pillar of Prince Andrew's former life, and their testimonies illuminate different facets of his conduct. Royal protection officers, for instance, are elite members of the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Branch. Their work is constant. They travel with the royals, stay in the same hotels, and often become nearly invisible presences in private life. For an officer to speak out is to break a profound bond of trust central to the family's safety. Yet if they witness unethical, illegal, or degrading behavior, the moral conflict is enormous. Historically, the Official Secrets Act discouraged disclosure, but legal experts argue it does not grant blanket protection when criminal activity or gross misconduct is involved. If Looney is hearing from multiple officers daily, it signals a significant breakdown in the loyalty that once silenced these witnesses. Consider the perspective of a young officer assigned to the Duke in the early 2000s, trained to observe without comment, witnessing a revolving door of guests at Sunninghill Park or Royal Lodge, and interacting with figures such as Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. For years, secrecy is maintained because that is the code. But then comes the public denial on national television, the visible suffering of the victims, and a historian like Looney offering a safe outlet to tell the truth. At that point, the psychological dam breaks. This is the collective reckoning that Looney describes. The moment when the shadows finally begin to speak. Silence is no longer seen as a virtue, it has become a liability. Then there are the diplomats. During his tenure as the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment, Prince Andrew travelled extensively, earning the nickname Air Miles Andy. British embassy staff around the world were tasked with coordinating his visits, arranging meetings with foreign officials, and managing the fallout from his often blunt or controversial remarks. This was also a period when Andrew faced criticism for his associations with autocratic leaders and dubious businessmen. If diplomats are now willing to speak on the record, they could provide a detailed account of how the Duke leveraged his royal status and whether it was always aligned with the UK's interests. Some in the Foreign Office reportedly referred to this time as the Duke of Hazard era. Diplomats often found themselves smoothing over inappropriate comments or questioning the presence of certain business associates in his entourage. There are whispers of Andrew demanding luxury, accommodations that stretched embassy budgets, and pushing for meetings that didn't always match official policy. If Looney's follow-up includes testimony from senior diplomats, it would go beyond personal critique. It could expose how the British government allowed a high-ranking royal to act unpredictably on the international stage for over a decade. The section on Navy personnel is particularly striking. For years, Andrew's identity was closely tied to his military service, including his active role in the 1982 Falklands War, where he flew dangerous missions and earned public respect that lasted decades. Yet, Looney's research suggests even this legacy is under scrutiny. Our former Navy colleagues speaking about his conduct on board, his treatment of subordinates, or the ways his service was later used to enhance his public image. For someone who prides himself on his naval career, criticism from fellow servicemen would be a serious blow. In the military, camaraderie and respect within the ranks are sacred. Allegations of entitlement or special treatment could undermine the image of Andrew as a dedicated professional, stripping away one of his last sources of public esteem. Sarah Ferguson, the Duke's ex-wife, occupies a uniquely difficult position. Over the past 3 decades, she has navigated cycles of scandal and redemption, from the infamous 1992 photos to the 2010 cash for access sting. Yet she has consistently reinvented herself as a children's author, media personality, and spokesperson. Her loyalty to Andrew has never wavered. She has called them the happiest divorced couple in the world. But this loyalty comes at a price. By sharing a home at Royal Lodge and publicly defending him, she has tied her reputation to his. New allegations from Looney's sources could once again overshadow her achievements. For Sarah, this is not just a PR challenge, it threatens her livelihood and standing. She has worked to build a personal brand through podcasts, historical romance novels, and media work, establishing herself as independent and resilient. Yet she continues to act as Andrew's buffer, presenting his human side to the public. If Looney's reporting suggests she was more than a supportive ex-wife, if she played a role in or knew about his more controversial dealings, her carefully reconstructed image could unravel. Looney's comparison to Spain's King Juan Carlos is instructive. Juan Carlos, celebrated for safeguarding Spanish democracy after Franco, later faced allegations of financial impropriety involving multi-million-dollar deals. The parallel suggests that even once respected figures can see their reputations eroded when private dealings come to light, facing dwindling public support. He made the surprising choice to leave Spain in August 2020 and has since been living in Abu Dhabi. The situation mirrors Prince Andrew in several ways. Both were younger sons thrust into influential positions. Both enjoyed a lavish lifestyle with strong connections in the Middle East. And both found that the privilege that once shielded them ultimately became a trap, leaving exile as the only escape. If Andrew were to take such a step, it would mark an unprecedented humiliation for the royal. The King News. No senior member in modern history has fled the country to avoid accountability. The Middle East has long been a comfortable space for Andrew. He maintains relationships with Gulf ruling families and has often appeared supportive of their interests. This region could offer him the privacy and protection he no longer finds in the UK or US, yet the optics of a British prince living luxuriously abroad while his reputation crumbles at home would be an ongoing embarrassment for King Charles. Exile would also require significant logistical support, secure residences, financial networks, and loyal allies far beyond what an ordinary citizen could manage, but feasible for a prince. The crucial question is the cost to the monarchy. A perception of Andrew running away could be read as an admission of guilt, creating a permanent shadow of scandal that undermines the king's efforts to restore the monarchy's image. The situation at Royal Lodge exemplifies this tension. A Grade 2 listed house in Windsor Great Park, it was once the Queen Mother's residence and became Andrew's after he signed a 75-year lease. King Charles reportedly wants him to move to the smaller Frogmore Cottage, once home to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, as part of a broader effort to reduce royal expenses. Andrew has resisted, investing heavily in repairs to honor his lease. However, new allegations could shift the balance of power. Reports indicate the king has already cut Andrew's private security allowance, forcing him to fund his own protection. Combined with the strain of continuous scrutiny, financial and psychological pressures may finally force a resolution. Royal Lodge represents more than a home, it symbolizes Andrew's remaining status. Leaving it would signal that he is no longer a senior royal. Yet, as Looney's research shows, the protective walls around him are eroding under the weight of first-hand accounts. If the king determines that Andrew's presence in Windsor irreparably harms the monarchy's image, even his lease may not shield him. Residences can be made untenable both socially and financially. For the public, especially older generations, the monarchy is not just a family, it embodies national identity. When that symbol is tarnished, it affects collective sentiment. Once the royals were granted privilege in exchange for stability and service. But when that contract appears broken, public support fades. This generation recalls 1992, the Queen's difficult year, Windsor Castle's fire, and the collapse of 3 royal marriages, but then there was faith in institutional reform. Today, scandals surrounding Andrew feel more personal, touching on character and legality, and the public demands accountability. The flood of material emerging from Andrew Looney underscores the shift. Silence is no longer guaranteed. The public wants to know how the Duke of York operated for so long and what those in power knew. Looney, a meticulous researcher, verifies information through multiple sources rather than relying on rumors. When corroborated by protection officers and diplomats, his findings carry significant weight. As the release of Untitled approaches, it promises a detailed, evidence-based account of these testimonies. Asterisk his skill in gathering information, conducting archival research, and carrying out in-depth interviews makes him a formidable adversary for the palace's public relations apparatus. The legal stakes are equally significant. Although the Duke settled his civil case with Virginia Giuffre in the U.S. without admitting liability, the court of public opinion never truly adjourned. Fresh testimonies could spark new inquiries in the UK or beyond. If formal charges were ever brought, as Looney predicts, the British legal system would face a test unlike any in generations. The prospect of a prince in a witness box or worse, a dock, is something the government would undoubtedly prefer to avoid. Yet, the law moves independently, and once it is set in motion, halting it can be nearly impossible. For Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, this is far more than a passing scandal. It represents a profound shift in their reality. The Royal Lodge, once a refuge, now feels like a fortress under siege. The past has reopened its floodgates, and no amount of royal spin can contain the resulting torrent of revelations. History is unfolding before our eyes. The rise and fall of the House of York illustrates both the strengths and vulnerabilities of the modern monarchy. It is a narrative of heroism and hubris, loyalty and betrayal, and ultimately the pursuit of truth in a world long defined by secrecy. The emotional weight on those involved cannot be understated. For Prince Andrew, raised at the epicenter of global privilege, the transition to public disgrace is likely disorienting and painful. Imagine a life spent in palaces, receiving constant deference and attention, only to confront social ostracization in one's 60s. Such a dramatic fall can foster a siege mentality, where trust is reserved for a shrinking inner circle perhaps. Explaining the enduring closeness between Andrew and Sarah, psychologists describe a narcissistic injury when someone with a heightened sense of self experiences a severe blow to their ego or public image. Losing his military titles and HR status was likely such an injury for Andrew. Rather than prompting humility, this often triggers withdrawal, defensiveness, or reliance on allies who reinforce the old sense of reality. Whistleblowers, as Looney notes, represent the ultimate threat to this protective bubble, introducing outside realities directly into the prince's private sphere. Sarah Ferguson's journey is equally intricate. Open about her struggles with self-esteem and the need for approval, she must endure relentless scrutiny. Yet, her resilience, her ability to remain composed and carry on has been her saving grace. Even so, constant pressure and new allegations touching on her family or private life could expose vulnerabilities previously unseen. The death of Queen Elizabeth, who maintained a personal fondness for Sarah despite past scandals, has removed a significant ally. King Charles, more pragmatic than sentimental, does not share his mother's attachment to the York brand, leaving Sarah and Andrew more exposed than they have been in decades. The media's role is critical in this ongoing saga. The British press has long had a love-hate relationship with the Yorks, transitioning from darlings to villains and now to perpetual sources of fascination. Major outlets picking up Looney's revelations underscore a massive global appetite for this story. Media coverage also creates a feedback loop. The more whistleblowers are reported on, the more others may feel empowered to come forward. The Epstein connection remains central. While much attention has focused on Andrew's friendship with the disgraced financier, Looney's sources could shed further light on the details of that relationship, flight arrangements, who was present, and visits to various homes. These seemingly minor facts can accumulate into a compelling, damaging narrative. For investigative bodies like the FBI, a book containing first-hand staff testimonies represents a treasure trove of potential leads. Finally, the repercussions extend to the firm itself, the institutional and business dimensions of the royal family. The unfolding scandal is not just a personal crisis for Andrew and Sarah. It has far-reaching implications for the monarchy's image, credibility, and operations. The monarchy's influence depends heavily on soft power. While it lacks legislative authority, it holds the ability to inspire, unify, and embody the ideals of British society. When a senior royal becomes mired in persistent scandal, that influence erodes. Headlines dominated by Prince Andrew's legal troubles and potential flight to the Middle East complicate King Charles's role in representing Britain internationally. The institution itself is undergoing a significant period of reorganization. King Charles has aimed to modernize the monarchy, making it more financially efficient and more in tune with a younger, more diverse Britain. Prince Andrew, however, is a shadow over this effort. He symbolizes the old era of unchecked privilege and minimal accountability. Each day his controversies remain in the news undercuts the king's message of a reformed monarchy. Comparisons to King Juan Carlos of Spain extend beyond the act of fleeing. They reflect legacy. Juan Carlos was once Spain's most admired monarch, yet his reputation is now overshadowed by how his reign ended. Prince Andrew's legacy is still being shaped, but it appears to be trending in a similarly tarnished direction for older generations. Particularly those over 55, this is especially poignant. There was a time when Andrew was seen as the spare who had carved out a purpose through military service and commerce. Watching that image dissolve into scandal feels like a classical tragedy. The whistleblowers, cited by Looney, are not mere literary devices, they are real people whose accounts are legally and personally significant. By going on the record in a published work, they attach their names to their statements and demonstrate a willingness to defend them in court if necessary. This signals a level of credibility that should deeply concern the York family's legal team. Looking ahead, whether criminal charges might be brought is the key unknown. While UK and US legal systems are independent, both face public pressure to demonstrate that no individual, not even a prince, is above the law. Should evidence from these testimonies indicate criminal behavior, authorities would be compelled to act. While the idea of a royal indictment is almost unimaginable, recent years have proven that seemingly unthinkable events can occur. The possibility of Andrew fleeing to the Middle East is perhaps the most dramatic scenario Looney predicts. It would represent a desperate final act, posing immense logistical challenges for the British government. How would such an exile be handled? Would he retain his pension or titles? Constitutional experts are likely already pondering these questions discreetly. The ongoing fallout for Andrew and Sarah underscores that the past is never truly gone, it continues to assert itself. As William Faulkner once observed, choices, associations, and actions from decades ago inevitably demand accountability. For the Yorks, this flood of scrutiny symbolizes a truth that can no longer be contained. Considering the broader picture, the House of York is not just two individuals, it represents decades of the history of one of the world's most famous families. From Andrew and Sarah's introduction, reportedly by Princess Diana at Royal Ascot, their lives have existed under constant observation. Historically, however, that scrutiny was filtered through palace control. Today, that filter has lifted. Scholars like Andrew Looney contribute to a growing movement toward transparency. In the information age, royal mystique is giving way to human reality. Some mourn the loss of escapism, but for many, the shift toward accountability is overdue. The involvement of former naval colleagues in the discussion is particularly revealing, suggesting that dissatisfaction with Andrew's conduct may extend far beyond recent years. Scrutiny of his military service, including his command of HMS Cottesmore and his time with the Fallons, could reveal early signs of the behaviors now under public criticism. There are also financial consequences. Being a royal is costly, but being a disgraced royal is even more so, with mounting legal fees and security expenses adding to the burden. Given the enormous expenses and upkeep of a sprawling estate like Royal Lodge, the Duke's financial situation is undoubtedly under significant pressure. Relocating abroad wouldn't eliminate these costs. It would merely shift them. Sarah Ferguson's financial history is widely known. She has often taken on the responsibility of keeping the family financially afloat. Attempting to uphold a royal lifestyle without a steady royal income creates the very conditions that can lead to the questionable associations at the heart of this crisis. Turning to the Duke's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, they are frequently overlooked in this saga. Both have worked diligently to build independent careers and nurture their own families. They have remained largely silent during their father's troubles. Yet the influx of whistleblower accounts could thrust them into the public eye, especially if the stories touch on their upbringing or interactions with their father's associates. Bearing the weight of the York name must be especially challenging now. How do they explain these events to their children? How do they navigate life as minor royals while their father faces such intense scrutiny? For the over 55 audience, many of whom have spent their lives striving for financial stability and a comfortable retirement, the image of a prince residing in a 30-room mansion while under serious allegations can feel particularly unjust. This sense of fairness, why should royal rules differ from those applied to ordinary citizens, is central to the public's interest in Looney's work. The fascination is not mere gossip. It's about accountability and equality before the law. In the months ahead, it will be telling to see whether Looney's predictions come to pass. Will the paperback release of Untitled uncover even more whistleblowers? Could Untitled definitively tarnish the Duke's reputation? And will King Charles take the decisive steps that many expect? The king faces a delicate balancing act, upholding his duty to the crown while managing personal feelings for his brother. History, however, shows that the crown invariably takes precedence. One thing is certain: this ordeal for Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson is a defining moment for the British monarchy in the 21st century. It tests the king's leadership, the impartiality of the legal system, and the public's patience with an institution grappling with the tension between centuries-old traditions and modern expectations. The so-called floodgates are more than metaphorical. They signal a cultural shift, moving away from deference and toward transparency. Whether Prince Andrew faces the consequences or seeks exile, the truth is inevitably emerging, and that, in itself, may prove the most powerful force. We are deeply grateful for your continued support of this channel. Your engagement, comments, and presence allow us to deliver this level of detailed analysis. We will continue to watch and report as the next chapters of this saga unfold. Stay informed, stay engaged, and above all, stay curious. The truth is rarely as simple as headlines suggest, and we remain committed to exploring it with you. Finally, the story of the House of York is not solely about a prince and a duchess. It reflects broader questions about leadership, accountability, forgiveness, and what society requires from its institutions. As the floodgates of the past continue to open, we can use this insight to better understand the world around us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.